This is what we're up against. First, let me introduce myself to you. And everything you've read about me on Google is not true. Before 9/11, I was completely apolitical. I was your quintessential New York City career girl. I loved my art, my music, my books, my fashion, my life. I assumed my freedom. I never for 1 second thought that it could be jeopardized, that it wasn't forever. We had the good cop on the beat. America defeated evil during World War II. I lived in a post-historical mindset, and I was shattered on 9/11. That was my political awakening. I didn't know who had attacked my country, in my city, in my homeland, the capital of my country, Washington, D.C., the military supercenter, the Pentagon. And I felt guilty that I didn't know who had attacked my country. And when I found out, I felt guiltier still that I didn't understand why they had attacked my country. I thought of Islam the way I would think of Buddhism or Judaism or Christianity, that it was just another religion. I was wrong. Islam is a religion, but it is a comprehensive system. It is political, it is social, it is legal, it is military, it is dietary. Islamic law, unlike Jewish law, which pertains only to Jews, and canon law, which pertains only to Christians, Islamic law asserts its authority over non-Muslims, which is why you see the oppression, subjugation, and slaughter of non-Muslims and religious minorities in Muslim countries under the Sharia. These are things I did not know. When George Bush stood up at the mosque a week after 9/11 with terror-tied group CARE on his right and terror-tied group ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, on his left, and said, "Islam is peace," I said, okay. But then I read the Quran. And I read the candid scholars, the great candid scholars of Islam, Ibn Waraq, Bacheyor, Robert Spencer. And the more I learned, yes, applause in order. The more I learned, the more there was a disconnect from reality. And here we are, 15, 16 years later, and that disconnect could not be greater. I increasingly found myself online because that was the last frontier for free speech, where people could say things. I mean, the media was just self-enforcing Sharia. They were scrubbing, censoring, and so someone sent me the template for a blog. I'm like, what's a blog? Because I would comment on websites, and they said, you know, you should have a blog. I'm like, what's a blog? They're like, shut up and start writing. And I did, and I started Atlas Shrugs. And everything, all the work you know of me is from that website, where that's the mothership of ideas. And everything happened organically. Everything that you've heard, that I'm a provocateur, it's just a lie. You know, for example, in 2009, a couple of girls in Ohio wrote me and said they were worried about their friend. Their friend was a young girl who had converted out of Islam, very afraid that her family would find out, and she had disappeared. And everyone thought she had been honor killed. She turned up in Florida. Her name was Rivka Barry. Her mosque, the Noor Mosque, had been spying on her, found out from her Facebook page that she had converted out of Islam, told her parents. Her father immediately flew home and said, if you have this Jesus in your heart, I'm going to kill you. So she ran away. She's one of the few, okay, unlike Aksa Parvez, for example, that escaped. And I started to cover this because what happened was these terror-tied groups like CARE sought to bring her back to the household where her life was threatened. And because she flew to Florida, she didn't fly, excuse me, she took a bus to Florida because it was a pastor she had met online, and he was the only person that she felt safe with, him and his wife. And of course the media painted this pastor who took her in as some, you know, Christian extremist. So here you have a Christian extremist whose crime is being good and welcoming in a little girl in trouble, 17-year-old girl, and you have the Islamic extremist who is lopping heads off, and they're somehow the same. Extremist. Don't be fooled in this word game. Extremist is the art of the smear. What does extreme mean anyway? Is extremism in pursuit of the good a bad thing? Is extremism in pursuit of the truth, liberty, a bad thing? It's a smear to knock you back and to knock you off your game. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, you better get on your game, because this war is very real. And your freedoms are in real jeopardy. So back to Rivka Barry, if I may. There's a point to this story. I'm in Florida covering the trial to bring her back to this deadly household, and as I'm standing waiting for my ride, I see a bus that says, "Come to Islam." Why Islam? And I'm thinking, what about the Muslims who want to leave Islam? Where do they go? Who gives them help? That's where I got my idea for the first bus ad. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So I took space out in Miami, in Florida, where this was going on. And I took their exact same ad, you know, with the sun and the sky and the beautiful meadow. And instead of saying, "Come to Islam," I said, "Is your family threatening you? Is there a fatwa on your head?" And I offered help for Muslims whose lives were in jeopardy. And I will tell you that the ensuing insanity was breathtaking. When I returned back to New York, my lobby was filled with paparazzi. And it wasn't because I was Sophia Loren and I ran off with Cary Grant. It was madness. 24 hours after that ad went up, it came down. Aftercare, a terror-type group, UAE designated terror-type group, complained. In New York, they were up, and it caused an enormous brouhaha. In Detroit, they came right down, and we sued in Detroit, and we won in Detroit, and the bankrupt city of Detroit appealed. Okay? That case is still ongoing. Meanwhile, Jessica Mokdad, a young Muslim girl who lived in the area where those bus ads would run, was honor killed by her father. And I just want to say something about Muslim girls who want to escape devout households where they don't have a choice. They really have nowhere to go. When I did at a conference out in California, I had about 20 former Muslims discussing their journey. One of the Muslims on that panel got help from seeing one of my bus ads. No one talks about the lives we save. We're living in an age where good is evil and evil is good. So I continued to run ads. And every ad was a response to something. I didn't sit all of a sudden wake up one day and say, "Hey, I think I'm going to get some devout Muslims upset with me." That never happened. When there were vicious anti-Israel ads running in New York City, I ran an ad that basically said, "In any war between the civilized man and the savage, support the civilized man. Support Israel, defeat jihad."
Everybody in the crowd agrees with that one?
They wouldn't run them. They run these libelous ads against Israel, apartheid state, and the most benevolent country, the only country on it that drops flyers, warning that, listen, we're coming in to take that missile rocket launcher out of your living room on Thursday at 3 o'clock. So I sued New York, and I won. And the same thing happened in Washington, D.C., and in Boston, and in San Francisco, and in Seattle. And what I will tell you, what is happening in the United States, because we have a First Amendment, which is what you're sorely lacking. That's your problem. My problem is, you can have a First Amendment, but if it's not enforced, it's just a piece of paper. So what every city did was ban political ads. An end run around the First Amendment. This is what we're up against. This is Sharia in the West. Oh, I know, it's hate speech. The worst thing that you could have ever done was criminalize hate crime and hate speech. First of all, all crime is hate. So you prosecute to the full extent of the law. Once you start criminalizing what's in a person's mind, you're done. You're done as a society.
Morgan Freeman agrees with me.
We have in this country, I am a monster. You know, how does a New York City glam girl go from that to the world's, what do they call me? Oh yeah, the world's top Islamophobe. Hate queen. Although I have no crown, looking forward to that. Racist, Islam is not a race, and you heard those morons outside. I mean, there's a condition for people who are born without brains. Screaming, no race, excuse me, I'm Jewish, okay? And as far as being compared to Hitler, my whole family fled Europe. This is the era of the absurd. And I will tell you that this is not new. This is exactly what they did to the Jews in the lead up to the World War II. You don't just go from, living a normal life to ovens. It doesn't just happen that way. It's a systematic dehumanization of a people, which is what you see them doing to Israel and what you see them doing to the Jews. This is what we're seeing. And the key to all of it, just so that you know, the fight is for freedom of speech. First of all, a free society must be an informed society. Freedom of speech is the foundation of a free society, and without it, a tyrant can wreak havoc unopposed. Putting up with being offended is essential in a pluralistic society in which people differ on basic truths. If a group will not bear being offended without resorting to violence, that group will rule unopposed, while everyone else lives in fear. That's what we're witnessing. We have so much to go over, which is why, A, you have to buy the book, because that's my Hanukkah gift to you. I never talk about the personal aspect of my life. You have to keep a little something in your neshama. But it was important that you could see how I came to this so organically. Even the cartoon exhibition that I'm sure you've heard so much about. Understand how we got to that. In the wake of the Charlie Hebdo bloodbath, a 2-year-old fatwa was issued against Hebdo for running cartoons of Muhammad. They slaughtered, devout jihadis slaughtered the staff en masse. 3 days after that, Muslim leaders in America, in Garland, Texas, held a conference, not in support of freedom of speech. Wouldn't that have been a glorious moment for westernized Muslims? Like, yeah, we will not, They held a conference called Stand with the Prophet. They were standing for the Sharia. They were standing for the Prophet Muhammad in defense against the Hebdo staff who had been slaughtered. So I held a conference in support of freedom of speech. It was an art exhibit showing Muhammad over 1,400 years, that he had been depicted, that people weren't always being killed, that it was happening today as a violent means to impose the Sharia, the blasphemy laws of Islam, on the West. That's why I did it. And then I said, hey, artists, anyone who wants to submit an artwork, sketch, feel free. Of course, ironically, that former Muslim, Bash Boston, won the contest, an innocuous cartoon of a rather burly and studly Muhammad saying, you can't draw me. And the cartoonist's hand saying, that's why I drew you. So, jihadists attempted to open fire on the event. Now, this is such a convoluted story, because you think that's enough, that's bad enough. And if it wasn't for my security team, the great men you see here, in and around here, heroes, there's no telling how many would be dead. But what is really jarring is what we found out afterwards. We found out that the FBI, and how I found this out is even more unsettling, the FBI was communicating, they were in on the planning of the jihad event. Now, I didn't have a problem with this. The left said, oh, look, he's entrapping them. No. I get that. I get infiltrating jihad cells. How else? Donnie Brasco, the mafia, how else are you going to do it? I had no problem with that, even when he said tear up Texas. My problem was that not only were they communicating before they were in on the planning, they were there. They were in Garland. They were texting back and forth. How many people are there? How much law enforcement is there? Is the FBI there? We know this because those texts showed up in an indictment of an ISIS recruiter in North Carolina who was indicted a year and a half later. That's when we found out about that. They were at the event. And then CBS 60 Minutes did a piece that they were in the car behind the jihadists. When the jihadists got out of the car to start firing, the FBI got out and took cell phone footage. And when they took out their guns to start firing, the FBI got back in their car and drove away. They did nothing to protect us. They did not even warn us. That's scary. Because I don't believe that that agent was rogue. There had been texts, they knew this was going to happen. This came from on high. That should concern every freedom-loving human being. That they knew, they were in on it, they did nothing about it. And even in this plot, there was another plot, there was a plot to behead me in Boston. We find out in the trial, which just finished, that the FBI was talking to them. No warning, didn't warn my chief of security. And because I was such a hard target, they decided to go after Boston cops instead, the boys in blue, is how they referred to them. And thank God, those cops killed them. Now, I have to leave here, actually tonight, because I have to be in the sentencing of the ringleader of this Islamic plot to behead me. All because I stand in defense of freedom of speech. The idea that I'm anti-Muslim. I help Muslim girls get to safety. Meanwhile, we hear today Linda Sarsour, the darling of the left-wing movement, the leader of the women's march, who wants to cut off Ayaan Hirsi Ali's vagina and Brigitte Gabriel's vagina, and believes that Sharia law is superior to Western law. I have the tweets. If you want to see them, I mean, this is not hyperbole. The tweets, right here. Comes out today that women in the Arab organization which she led were systematically sexually abused with her sanction. Not only her sanction, she would yell at the women that reported it. And and body shame them, fat shame them. You're too fat, nobody would harass you. Yeah, the leader of the women's movement with their pussy hats. Glamour magazine's Woman of the Year. Did you see her? In that thing she was wearing? If that's glamour, okay? My point in all this is whether it's the contests or the conferences or the ads or the website, the battle is freedom of speech, and it's very real. And after President Trump was elected, it got much worse because the left was so stunned by this election. They were stunned.
Fake news.
They couldn't believe it. I mean, think about it. You had every media outlet who literally, like your Canadian media, their jokes.
Yeah.
I mean, to run Faisal Qadi, a terrorist-supporting jihadist Sharia advocate, op-ed why I shouldn't speak in Canada, but will never give me one shot, one rebuttal, never. So here you have the media unabashedly pro-Hillary. You have Miley Cyrus shaking her thing. You have Katy Perry shaking her thing. You have the whole zeitgeist. There wasn't a crack for any light to get in. And it won. Yeah. If you don't believe you're living in the age of miracles, you ain't paying attention. So the left didn't know who to blame. We have the media, we have music, we have movies, we have the Beltway, we have academia, we have the public school, we have everything. How did that happen? And they blamed websites like mine and talk radio, and how do I get my message out there? You know, they'll never allow me to get my message. When they have to report on me, they monsterize me. The way they monsterize you, the way they monsterize Ezra, the way they monsterize JDL, because they won't debate me. I'm happy to debate anybody, because the premise of my ideas is individual rights and freedom, equality for all before the law. That's where all my work comes from. 100 years ago, I'd have been fighting communism, or Stalinism, or the National Socialist Workers' Party, which was the Nazi party. The idea that the Nazis are hard right is absurd. Read Mein Kampf. Read it. Read Hitler's Mein Kampf. Yes, he was a vicious Jew hater. But he was a hard leftist. He was a socialist. That they can get away with these big, fat, giant lies. Like Israel, it's about land. This teeny tiny 9 miles at its wide country surrounded by these enormous Muslim lands. And it's basically say this is a completely irrational planning. Where you have either the brutes or the feelings, my feelings are hurt, up against reason and logic and objective reality. That's where we are. And objective reality is losing. And that's why it's up to you. There are no casual observers in this war. None. If you're sitting on the fence, you're part of the problem. Any compromise between good and evil, evil profits. Any compromise between food and poison, death wins. Objective reality, and what is reality? Truth is the recognition of reality. Truth is now the new hate speech. I'm not anti-Muslim. Let's say she's anti-Muslim. No, I'm not. They're lovely people. It's a bad ideology. The war against the jihad against the Jews, which, by the way, they try to separate from the jihad against the Coptics and the jihad against the Christians, the Coptic Christians, and so on and so on. It's all of a piece. You have to read the Quran. We don't burn the Quran. No. We read it. If you want to understand the war against Israel, you read the Quran. I mean, we don't have time now for me to read to you every vicious Jew-hating hadith and Quranic verse, but Kaiba, ya Yahud, Seish Muhammad, Sa Yahud. You hear that in every single anti-Israel rally from New York to California to Paris to Jerusalem to London. Kaiba. Jews remember Kaiba. The armies of Muhammad are coming. Kaiba was when Muhammad exterminated an entire tribe of Jews. The Qurayza tribe. The hatred of the Jews is in the Quran. What we have to work towards is to get the Muslim world to start expunging their Quranic texts and teachings of this hatred. That's the only thing that's going to work, not sanctioning it. And sanctioning it they are. You have more than one imam here in Canada who've been preaching the killing of the Jews. New Jersey imam, just this week, called for the killing of the Jews. He's not being fired. 2 imams in California inside of a week, only because somebody got in there and started videoing. I urge everyone to video. They don't want their mosque surveilled. Any mosque that's tied to a terror attack must be surveilled. You know what? Why don't you come and surveil my temple? I can't guarantee that you won't fall asleep. But I'm not worried about what you're going to hear. Why? Why is the Muslim, and I'm talking about the Ummah, not the quote-unquote jihadis, wouldn't they want you to find the jihadists in their midst? We don't see that. And yes, it does upset me that when it comes to the Jewish state, particularly you see what's happening in Jerusalem, where Jerusalem is mentioned over 700 times in the Jewish Bible and not once in the Quran. You see this worldwide violence and outrage. I want to see that violence and outrage when there's a jihadi attack. Why aren't the Muslims taken to the streets when devout Muslims are slaughtering in the cause of Allah and screaming Allahu Akbar? No, what we get is New York Times stories about how Allahu Akbar is a beautiful phrase. 2 days in a row after the Halloween jihadi and Jake Tapper. Now, Allahu Akbar is not. It is the jihad war cry. It is the war cry of Muhammad. That he would rebel yell when he would go into a village to rape, pillage, and destroy. But he would wait until daybreak. Always. Why? To see if the Muslim call to prayer was said. And then he wouldn't attack. Truth is not the enemy. Truth is our friend. And I'm just one person. But you can't make a difference. Look, it was an ugly battle, but, you know, there's no 16-story mega mosque in a building that was destroyed at ground zero. You can't hide it. That would have been Mecca on the Hudson. Now, I have no problem with mosques being built. There are hundreds in New York City, thousands in America. But the idea of a mega mosque at ground zero, when we know in Islamic history there has never been a mosque of reconciliation and healing on the site of a jihad attack. Never. But I can tell you there have been tens of thousands of mosques built on the sites of conquered lands. Tens of thousands of Hindu temples. And what is the dome? What is Al-Aqsa? But that very thing, right on top of not just the first but the second temple. When are we going to be able to start talking about this without fearing jail? Without fearing we're going to lose our jobs?
That's right.
You cannot talk about this. And this is not Somalia, this is not Iran, this is not Saudi Arabia, this is Canada, and this is America. And you cannot talk about this, and this is why you must talk about it. You must. And I know what they do. I mean, they murder you in a way. They murder your good name. They make it impossible for you to get work. I mean, could you see me applying for a job, let's say, in a nursery school? World Stop Islamophobe. I don't oppose good people. I oppose bad ideology. And I am telling you, no society can be free without freedom of speech. This is the line in the sand. And you can see the madness. Because their ideas cannot stand up to challenge. Their ideas cannot stand up to scrutiny. That's why they have to monsterize us. Because you kill the messenger. Who's going to listen to the message of a monster? That's the objective, and that is why we must fight. Now, I want you to buy this book because most people will be shocked. I don't have time to go into every story, every battle, every attack, everything. Fatwa, hunted in America. A fatwa is a legal ruling issued by a recognized authority to kill in the cause of Islamic law. I am under a death threat, and by the way, it never goes away. I can't leave my house. Salman Rushdie, 1989, it's still alive. Charlie Hebdo, they were slaughtered 2 years after that fatwa. No one has ever renounced it. No one has ever said it's not true. And I'll tell you something, I cannot stand to see at these anti-Israel, these anti-Semitic rallies, those Jewish jihad soldiers, the Jews standing with them. For every pro-Israel rally I ever went to, I never saw a Muslim standing for Israel. Not one. You know why? Because their community would destroy them. And because it's against their teachings. The state of Israel is deeply humiliating and deeply offensive to the Muslim world. In their eyes, it cannot stand. That's what it is against Israel. And we have to stop being frank about this. And we have to stop sanctioning this creed apartheid, gender apartheid, Islamic Jew hatred, misogyny, and female genital mutilation. I mean, my God, Trudeau is cutting the FGM from Citizens Guides. Now, I think that he suffers from PTSD. You know, his mother, if you recall, in the 70s when we still had morals. Remember we still had morals? His mother, you know, was like out there on the front pages with her lady bits out.
She was a whore.
Okay, all right. Well, he was a little boy at the time. Maybe this is post-traumatic stress syndrome. I don't know, but it's very dangerous. You had a great prime minister, Stephen Harper. He was a great man. He was a great man. And you got cocky. Happened in New York. We had Giuliani, then we had Bloomberg, who wasn't as good, and now we have de Blasio, who, by the way, campaigned on dismantling counter-terror programs. Halloween. A devout Muslim runs down children, pedestrians on a bike path, on Halloween, downtown Manhattan, waving the ISIS flag, and that's when Jake Tapper said, it means, it's a beautiful phrase, Allahu Akbar. But remember something, Mayor de Blasio dismantled that program. He's no friend of NYPD, I can tell you that. Dismantled the program, that jihadi's mosque, the Omar Mosque, was under investigation. There were 20 radical jihadis in that mosque, and de Blasio dismantled that program. And you know what? New York re-elected him 3 days later. The people have spoken, and the people will be punished. And I tell you, it's up to each and every one of you. You must teach your children. You must engage. And you know what I'm talking about. You're at the bakery, somebody says something nasty about Trump or whatever, and you don't say anything. Open your mouth. It's time.
I like that.
It cannot be 5 of us. Because you could kill 5 of us. I submit to you, if Ezra Levant was not the only Western media outlet that ran the Danish cartoons in 2005. If every media outlet ran those cartoons, because particularly since when they first ran in Denmark, nobody said anything in September. An Egyptian newspaper ran them in November, October or November. Nobody said anything. But when the Organization of Islamic Cooperation met in Saudi Arabia in December, they decided on a cartoon jihad. And then suddenly, in these deserts in the Middle East, with these beautiful Danish flags being burned, embassies were being burned, people were being slaughtered. It was the responsibility of every newspaper to run those cartoons. Not one did. And if they did, Charlie Hebdo staff would be alive today. Because you can't kill everyone. In closing, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for being brave enough to come. Don't make light of your being in this room. I know what it means. And I can tell you that if history has taught us anything, is that the individual can change the course of history. That individual is you. Get active, get involved, talk to each other. Whatever it is you like to do, do it, but you've got to first learn everything, and then you've got to educate those around you. The war right now is in the information battle space. All the bullets and the bombs and the bloodshed comes as a result of what happens in this war. And they're shutting us down. Listen, after Trump was elected, as I said, how did this happen? They blamed me, people like myself, the handful of us that were affected. So what happens? Facebook. I have 1,000,002. On my one page alone, I have about 8 pages of my groups. 1,000,002. They shut down my feed. Google AdSense terminated my account, saying I was, I guess, derogatory and dangerous. YouTube deleted my channel. 12 years old, I have that channel. They deleted over a 10-year-old video. Oh, so it was okay for 10 years and it's not okay now? Pinterest. Those little housewives, you know, out on Long Island. They can't share links. It's inappropriate content. This is how they're shutting us down. Now, I am suing the U.S. government because under Section 230 of the FEC Code, these social media giants are granted immunity from free speech lawsuits. And without getting that immunity lifted, these lawsuits that I'm sure you're hearing about, when you sign on, you're agreeing to their terms of service. But I submit to you that it's not the same thing anymore. In the last century, you had a telephone number. You would call people. Imagine if AT&T was listening into your phone saying, oh, you're not allowed to say that. We're taking your phone away. That's what's happening. I'm never on the phone now. I communicate via email, via Facebook, via Twitter. This is how I communicate. And so, if you know, Teddy Roosevelt, using the Sherman Act, could take down Standard Oil, American Tobacco, and President Clinton could sue based on antitrust, and I'm, by the way, such a capitalist, I abhor these antitrust suits. I don't believe in them. But this is the first time, I don't want their money, and believe me, Facebook is making more money than a lot of the small countries. But they have to adhere to the First Amendment. That has to be the line in the sand. They can keep all the money, but this idea where, I'm sure you heard the Shahrukh Hadim set up 2 pages on Facebook. One was pro-Israel, one was pro-Palestinian. They ran the exact same content on both pages, but the pro-Israel page was taken down. Do you know that a chief officer of Facebook, Joel Kaplan, was sent to Pakistan, met with the interior minister and other government officials to assure them that they would take down any posts that were critical of Islam? An American major communications company flying to Pakistan, they're not even coming here, flying to Pakistan to assure them that they will enforce the Sharia. Out of control. Never in recent history has so much power been in the hands of so few. You can't. People say, forget Facebook, let's start somewhere else. Are you kidding? I'm not going to cede that field. I have millions of followers there. This is how we build an army. You want me to cede the field? And let me tell you something, when YouTube took down my channel, tens of thousands of retweets got my channel back.
Nice.
When PayPal, that's right, that deserves applause. That was you. That was you. Outside of incitement to murder, what are they so afraid of? I'll tell you what they're afraid of. My ideas are better. My ideas will win in the information battle space. My ideas of individual rights, equality for all. or before the law. They'll win. That's why they got to shut us down. And that's why you have to fight. Thank you. And buy the book. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Way to go. Great speaker. Phenomenal job. Standing ovation, of course. Really
Thank you,
enjoyed it.
Pamela.
Very informative, very entertaining.
Just
Solid
getting
piece.
ready. As
Thank
was
you
going
guys
to
for
be
watching. Really
interviewing
appreciate all the
Pamella.
support. We're hovering around
And
140 views.
after that, we'll have
I let
questions
you guys
to be
go.
answered
Thank
from
you
the
very much for
audience.
watching. Until next time, guys. Have a good one.
Also.